Get out and don't ever return. That's what my parents told me. So I walked away without saying anything. 3 months later, my dad messaged me asking, "Why haven't you covered the mortgage?" I answered, "I figured I wasn't wanted there." And right after that, my phone blew up with messages. Can you imagine dedicating 3 years of your life, sacrificing everything for your family, only for them to scream, "Get out," and then, months later, beg for your money? Because that's exactly what happened to me. They told me I was a burden, pathetic, and that I was manipulating them with my money. So I walked away. And when they finally came crawling back, desperate, I realized who truly needed whom. This isn't just a story about cutting ties. It's about finding your worth when the people who should love you most treat you like an ATM. So let me tell you how walking away from my family became the best decision I ever made. Growing up in a modest suburb outside Columbus, Ohio, I was always the responsible one. My dad, Richard, worked his fingers to the bone at a manufacturing plant. His hands were always stained with motor oil, his back aching. My mom, Patricia, was a part-time bookkeeper, but her chronic migraines often kept her home. Then there was Lucas, my younger brother, 3 years my junior. He just seemed to glide through life with this effortless charm that made everything easy for him. I naturally fell into the role of peacekeeper. While Lucas threw tantrums or rebelled, I was the one smoothing things over. When my parents argued about money, which was all the time, I'd distract Lucas. Teachers loved me. I was mature, never caused trouble, always turned in my assignments. My report cards were a sea of A's and glowing comments. My senior year of high school, things got tight. Dad's hours were cut, Mom's health issues meant less work. Without a second thought, I picked up a part-time job at a grocery store, evenings and weekends. When I handed my parents my first paycheck, keeping just a tiny bit for gas and school, the relief on their faces, it made my chest swell with pride. Mom said, "Madison, honey, you don't have to do this." But her fingers clutched that check. "I want to help," I told her. "We're family. We take care of each other." That became my mantra. Through college, while other students worried about loans for spending money, I worked to support my family. I chose a state school close to home, found the cheapest dorm, and sent money whenever I could. My parents would call, full of thanks, bragging to neighbors about their responsible daughter. After graduation, moving back home felt completely natural. I'd landed a decent job as a marketing coordinator, and Lucas was starting college. Perfect, I thought. I could save on rent and help my family through what I assumed was a temporary rough patch. The mortgage was $1,847 a month. When they asked me to take it over, they seemed almost embarrassed. Dad explained his reduced hours, Mom's health. "Just until we get back on our feet," Mom promised. "Maybe 6 months, a year at most." I agreed without hesitation. Soon, I was covering utility bills, groceries, all sorts of household expenses. I picked up a second job, weekends at a clothing store, working nearly 60 hours a week. But seeing their stress melt away, it made every exhausting day feel worth it. My life became a carefully choreographed dance of responsibility. Up at 5:30, a quick workout, shower, coffee, then to my main job. Lunch breaks were for paying bills or running errands. After work, more errands, cooking dinner, trying to maintain some semblance of a social life. The validation was intoxicating. Neighbors called me a wonderful daughter. Family members praised my selflessness. Mom would gush, "Madison has been such a blessing. I don't know what we'd do without her." Months passed. That temporary arrangement became permanent, unspoken. Lucas needed $400 for textbooks? I covered it. The family car needed $800 in repairs? My responsibility. Emergency medical copays, appliance replacements, automatically on my plate. I told myself this was what family meant. This was love in action. While my friends traveled, dated, pursued grad degrees, I was building something meaningful, a foundation for the people I loved. My apartment fund became the family emergency fund. My vacation savings became Lucas's textbook money. My retirement contributions became household repairs. The pride felt justified. My parents bragged about me. Lucas appreciated his freedom. I felt indispensable. My contributions mattered. Looking back, I can see how gradually the dynamic shifted. But then, it felt right. I was the successful daughter, the responsible one, the family's financial backbone. My identity became completely intertwined with my ability to provide. I measured my worth by how much I could give. What I didn't realize was that gratitude can morph into expectation so slowly, you don't notice until it's completely gone. The shift started with small comments that left me vaguely unsettled. During Sunday dinner, Mom mentioned a coworker's daughter who just got engaged. "She's only 24, but she's got her whole life figured out," Mom said, glancing at me. "Some girls know how to balance career and personal life." The implication stung. A few weeks later, Dad quipped, "All work and no play makes for a pretty dull life, Madison. When's the last time you went on a date?" I'd been on 2 dates in a year. Both ended early because I was too exhausted to focus. How could I explain I barely had time to sleep, let alone date? "I'm just focused on building my career," I'd say. "That's what worries us," Mom replied, her voice taking on a tone I'd never heard. "You're 25, living at home, no social life. It's not healthy." The irony was suffocating. I was living at home because I paid their mortgage. I had no social life because I worked 2 jobs to cover their expenses. These facts had been twisted into my character flaws, not sacrifices. The criticism escalated. Family dinners became a battleground. Lucas would share his college stories, his internship prospects, his social activities, and my parents would hang on his every word. When I tried to share my work achievements, the response was polite but distant. "That's nice, honey," Dad would say, then immediately pivot to Lucas's latest win. I felt like a background character in my own family story. My contributions were acknowledged only when bills were due. My thoughts, my dreams? Little interest. The comparison game became routine. One painful dinner, Mom spent 20 minutes praising Lucas's girlfriend. Now that's a girl who knows how to make the most of her opportunities, she concluded. The unspoken message was clear, unlike me. When I mentioned feeling overwhelmed and wanting to reduce my retail hours to focus on advancing at my main job, the reaction was swift and sharp. Well, nobody forced you to take on so much responsibility, Mom said, her voice cold. You made these choices yourself. Technically true, but it felt like a betrayal. I chose to help them out of love, out of loyalty. To hear it framed as my personal burden felt gut-wrenching. Dad started making judgmental comments about my lifestyle. I bought myself a new jacket after months of deliberation, and he made a pointed remark about some people having money to throw around. I mentioned a small vacation with Emma, and he wondered aloud about people who could afford to be irresponsible with their finances. This, despite me being incredibly careful with money. I bought generic groceries, shopped sales. Yet, I was painted as frivolous. Meanwhile, Lucas could spend freely on video games, nights out, spring break trips. No questions asked. When he got an expensive new laptop, it was celebrated as an investment. When I bought a $10 book, Dad scoffed at unnecessary spending. The double standard was impossible to ignore. My parents began treating me like a paying tenant, not a daughter. They made plans without consulting me, even for family events. When they rearranged the living room, I had no say, even though I spent my evenings there and was paying for the house. It's our house, Mom said when I asked about the new furniture. That possessive pronoun felt like a slap after years of paying their mortgage. The emotional distance grew. They stopped asking about my day with genuine interest. The warm appreciation was replaced by grudging tolerance. It was as if my presence was an inconvenience. They seemed to be actively encouraging me to leave. Comments about independence, questions about my future living arrangements. I started questioning everything. Had I misunderstood? Was I a burden despite my financial contributions? The tension became so thick, you could cut it with a knife. But I clung to the idea it was just stress. Dad's job, Mom's health. I couldn't confront the possibility that my family genuinely didn't want me around. The breaking point began when my parents announced plans to redecorate. They'd been talking about it for months, showing me magazine clippings, full of enthusiasm. We've saved up enough to finally make this place feel like home again, Mom said. My heart sank when I realized what saved up meant. They expected me to fund the $3,500 renovation, while being completely excluded from decisions. We've already picked everything out, Dad explained. We just need you to cover the cost since you're so good with managing money. The casual assumption that I would pay for improvements to a house where I was increasingly unwelcome felt like a slap. When I hesitantly asked for input on choices for the common areas, Mom's response was swift and cutting. It's our house, Madison. We've lived here for 28 years. I think we know what we want. That, are again. But instead of arguing, I agreed. Happy parents, I told myself, meant a peaceful household. Around the same time, my career reached a crucial turning point. My manager offered a promotion, which meant more training, longer hours initially, but a significant salary increase. It was everything I'd worked for, but it would require reducing my weekend retail job. When I mentioned this at dinner, expecting celebration, the reaction was immediate and hostile. So, you're planning to abandon your family responsibilities for your career? Dad's voice was heavy with accusation. It's not abandoning anything, I protested. It's a chance to advance, which would ultimately benefit everyone. Sounds pretty selfish to me, Mom added. We depend on that income, Madison. You can't just decide to make less money because you want a fancier job title. Their response revealed everything. I wasn't their daughter with dreams. I was their income source. The promotion wasn't an achievement, it was an inconvenience. Lucas came home for spring break, and the tension only amplified. While I worked 60-hour weeks and funded renovations, he was planning an expensive trip to Cancun with his fraternity brothers. Mom and Dad said they could help with the trip costs, he mentioned casually. It's important for networking. I watched my parents hand him $800 for what was essentially a party vacation. The double standard was so blatant, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Then Emma visited for a weekend. I was so isolated, her visit felt like a rare lifeline. She noticed the family dynamics immediately. At dinner, she watched my parents praise Lucas while barely acknowledging my work. When I mentioned a successful marketing campaign, Dad changed the subject within 30 seconds to ask Lucas about internship applications. Madison has been such a support to this family, Emma said, trying to redirect. It's amazing how she manages 2 jobs and helps with everything. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents exchanged glances. Lucas suddenly became very interested in his food. Later that evening, Emma pulled me aside. I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer, she said gently. Do you feel appreciated in this house? The question hit me like a physical blow. It forced me to confront feelings I'd been suppressing. Of course, I replied automatically. They're my family. That's not what I asked. Do you feel appreciated? Do they treat you like someone they're grateful to have around, or like someone they expect things from? Her words planted seeds of doubt I couldn't shake. That night, I lay awake, replaying months of interactions through this new lens. When had my parents last thanked me? When had they asked about my goals, my dreams, my happiness? When had they last treated me like a daughter, not a resource? The most devastating realization came 2 days after Emma left. I was coming back from grocery shopping when I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen, unaware I'd returned. I wish Madison would just move out already, Mom was saying. She acts like she owns this place just because she pays some bills. I know, Dad agreed. She's becoming a burden with all her opinions. Lately, she's so moody and difficult to be around. Maybe we should start encouraging her more directly, Mom suggested. She's 26. It's not normal for her to still be living here. I stood frozen in the hallway, grocery bags cutting into my hands as my world crumbled. The people I had sacrificed everything for saw me as a burden. The family I had supported financially and emotionally wished I would disappear. That night, I made a decision. I was going to have a conversation about boundaries, mutual respect, and what our family relationship actually meant. I had no idea it would explode into something that would destroy everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and family. I spent 3 days planning. I wrote down key points, practiced different approaches, genuinely believing honest communication could fix things. I chose Sunday dinner, hoping the familiar setting would help. I prepared my favorite pasta, set the table nicely. I'd like to talk to you all about something that's been bothering me, I began, my voice steady. I've been feeling like there's some tension, and I think we should address it. The reaction was immediate and cold. Dad sat down his fork, crossed his arms. Mom's face twisted into pure annoyance. What kind of tension? Dad asked, defensive. I feel like I've been walking on eggshells, I continued carefully. I love this family, and I want to help, but lately it seems like nothing I do is appreciated. I'd like to talk about how we can communicate better. Valued? Mom laughed, but there was no humor. Madison, we've given you a roof over your head for 26 years. We raised you, fed you, clothed you, paid for your education, and you're sitting here talking about feeling undervalued. Her response completely threw me. I'm not talking about the past, I said, trying to stay calm. I'm grateful for everything. I'm talking about now, about how we interact as adults. I feel like my contributions aren't appreciated, and I want to understand why. Your contributions? Dad's voice was rising. What contributions? You mean paying some bills, Madison? That's called being an adult. That's called taking responsibility for yourself instead of freeloading off your parents forever. The word freeloading hit me like a physical blow. Freeloading? After 2 jobs, 2 years of paying their mortgage? I've been paying your mortgage for 2 years. I yelled, my voice shaking. I pay for groceries, utilities, Lucas's textbooks, car repairs, medical copays. How is that freeloading? Nobody asked you to do that. Mom snapped. Those were your choices, Madison. You decided to take on all that responsibility and now you're trying to use it to control us. Control you. I was genuinely confused. How am I trying to control anyone? You act like you own this place, Lucas chimed in, speaking for the first time. You have opinions about everything. You act like we owe you something, and you make everyone feel guilty whenever they spend money. The betrayal from my younger brother, whose education I'd partly funded, cut deeper than anything my parents had said. I don't understand, I said, tears welling up. I thought I was helping. I thought we were a team. A team? Dad stood up, face flushed. Madison, you're 26 with no life, no boyfriend, no friends, living in your parents' house and acting like a martyr because you choose to pay bills instead of building your own life. Each word was a knife. They weren't just attacking my contributions, they were attacking my entire existence. You want to know the truth? Mom said, standing too. You're selfish, Madison. You hide behind this family responsibility nonsense because you're too scared to live your own life. You use money to make yourself feel important and necessary because you don't have anything else going for you. You're manipulative. Dad added. You've made yourself so involved in our finances that we feel guilty for making any decisions without you. That's not love, Madison. That's emotional blackmail. I tried to defend myself, to explain it was all from love, but my words were drowned out. You want to know what we really think? Mom's voice was cruel, sharper than I'd ever heard it. We think you're pathetic. Your entire identity revolves around being needed by your family. You don't have hobbies, interests, or goals that don't involve us. It's unhealthy and, frankly, it's exhausting. You make everyone walk on eggshells, Lucas added. We can't enjoy anything without feeling like we have to justify it to you. We can't make plans without considering your schedule. I don't do that. I protested weakly, but even as I said it, a sliver of doubt crept in. Had I become too involved? You absolutely do, Dad said. And we're tired of it. Tired of feeling guilty for living our own lives in our own house. This is my house too, I said, the words coming out more forcefully. I pay the mortgage. I pay the bills. I have a right to be involved. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents looked at each other. Actually, Mom said slowly, that's exactly the problem. You think paying bills gives you ownership? You think contributing money makes you entitled to control our decisions? That's not how family works, Madison. Then how does family work? I asked, genuinely confused and hurt. Because I thought it meant supporting each other and being grateful for help when times are tough. Family, Dad said coldly, works when everyone respects boundaries and lives their own lives instead of trying to control others through financial manipulation. The accusation of manipulation was the final straw. After years of sacrifice, after giving up my own opportunities to help them, they were calling me manipulative. Fine, I said, standing from the table. If that's how you feel, maybe I should just leave. I expected them to protest, to apologize, to realize they'd gone too far. Instead, they exchanged another look, and Mom spoke words that would haunt me forever. Actually, yes. Maybe you should. You're 26, Madison. It's time you learn to live independently instead of hiding behind family obligations. The room spun. They weren't just letting me leave. They were encouraging it. You want me to leave? I barely whispered. We think it would be best for everyone, Dad said. You need to build your own life instead of living vicariously through ours. And we need space to be a family without feeling like we're being watched and judged all the time. Lucas nodded in agreement. That betrayal felt like the final nail in the coffin of everything I believed about our family. You're ungrateful. Dad shouted when I didn't respond immediately. Get out and never come back. We don't need your guilt trips or your money anymore. The words echoed. My entire family had just told me to leave. The people I'd sacrificed everything for had rejected me completely. I looked at their faces, searching for regret. Instead, I saw relief. They wanted me gone. Okay, I said quietly. I'll leave. And for the first time in that entire conversation, I meant every word. My calm acceptance seemed to surprise them all. I walked upstairs with steady steps, though my heart pounded. My childhood bedroom looked the same, but everything felt different, like I was seeing it through a stranger's eyes. I pulled out 2 suitcases. Essential clothes, documents, my laptop, a few sentimental items. I left behind furniture, books, appliances, things that belonged to a life I was no longer welcome to live. The most surreal part was the silence downstairs. No one came to check on me, no apology, no attempt to fix things. I could hear low murmurs of conversation, even occasional laughter, as if nothing significant had happened. Lucas actually came upstairs as I loaded my car. Need help with anything? He asked casually, like I was just moving out under normal circumstances. I've got it, I replied, not trusting myself to say more. He helped carry my computer bag to the car, making small talk about the weather. The normalcy of his behavior was more painful than outright hostility. This was just a regular moving day to him, not a family destroyed. I left my house key on the kitchen counter and walked out without saying goodbye. My parents were in the living room. I could see them, but they didn't acknowledge my departure. The sound of the front door closing behind me felt utterly final. Emma welcomed me into her apartment without question. That first night, I lay on her couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. I kept expecting my phone to ring, an apology, an explanation, anything. It never rang. The first few weeks were devastating. I cried in grocery stores when I saw pasta sauce that reminded me of family dinners. At work, when coworkers asked about weekend plans. At night, the absence of familiar voices made Emma's apartment feel foreign. But something unexpected began to happen alongside the grief. For the first time in years, I had money left over after paying my bills. Without the mortgage, utilities, groceries for 4 people, and constant family emergencies, my paychecks actually covered my expenses with room to spare. I could buy organic groceries without calculating every cent. I could replace worn-out clothes without guilt. I could buy coffee from the shop near my office. These small luxuries felt shameful at first, like I was betraying my former values. My work performance improved dramatically. No more leaving early for mom's appointments, no more calls during meetings about household emergencies. I focused entirely on my projects, attended networking events, pursued professional development. My manager noticed immediately. You seem different lately, she said during my review. More confident, more engaged. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. I started therapy, partly because Emma suggested it, partly because I genuinely couldn't understand how my family relationships had deteriorated so completely. Dr. Chin introduced me to concepts I'd never heard: parentification, codependency, emotional manipulation. It sounds like you took on adult responsibilities very young, she explained. That can create unhealthy family dynamics where your value becomes tied to what you provide rather than who you are. I began to understand that their treatment wasn't a sudden change, it was the result of patterns that had been developing for years. They had become accustomed to my support without reciprocating emotional care. I had enabled their dependence while sacrificing my own growth. 3 months passed without any contact. I created new routines, developed friendships, explored hobbies. I took a painting class, joined a book club, even went on a few dates with a colleague who made me laugh and treated me like I was worth pursuing. My new apartment was small, but it was entirely mine. I chose the furniture, the colors, the decorations. I cooked meals I enjoyed instead of trying to please everyone else. I watched movies I wanted to see, listened to music I liked, made decisions based on my desires. The independence was intoxicating. I had forgotten what it felt like to live for myself. I started saving for my own goals: a vacation to Europe, a graduate degree, a down payment on a house of my own. The most surprising change was how little I missed the constant drama and criticism. I hadn't realized how much emotional energy I'd spent managing other people's feelings. Without that burden, I felt lighter, more optimistic than I had in years. I was building a life that belonged entirely to me. And for the first time, I was genuinely happy, which made what happened next all the more revealing. I was grocery shopping on a Tuesday evening, 3 months and 2 weeks after leaving home, when my phone buzzed. My father's name on the screen made my stomach drop. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. But curiosity won. The message was brief, to the point. Why haven't you paid the mortgage? I stared at those 6 words for a full minute, standing in the pasta aisle. It wasn't, how are you, or we miss you. It was a demand. It revealed everything. They didn't want their daughter back. They wanted their ATM back. I took a screenshot and sent it to Emma. Apparently, I was never actually unwelcome, just temporarily inconvenient. Then, I crafted my response carefully. I thought I wasn't welcome anymore. My phone rang within 30 seconds. Madison. Dad's voice was different. Gone was the anger, the righteousness. Now, there was panic. Desperation. Dad, I said calmly, leaning against my shopping cart. We need to talk, he rushed. There's been some misunderstanding about what happened that night. What kind of misunderstanding? I asked, genuinely curious. We didn't mean for you to actually leave permanently, he stammered. We were all upset, saying things we didn't mean. You know how family arguments get. Actually, I don't, I replied. Because in healthy families, people don't tell their children to get out and never come back unless they mean it. Madison, please, he continued. We love you. We miss you. This whole thing has gotten way out of hand. The declaration of love would have meant something if it had come before the mortgage inquiry. But the timing made it clear. Their affection was tied directly to their financial needs. How are things going financially? I asked, already knowing the answer. The pause told me everything. It's been challenging, he admitted. We've fallen behind. The bank sent a notice about foreclosure. What about the money you saved by not having me around? I asked. All those groceries I wasn't eating, utilities I wasn't using, space I wasn't taking up? It's not that simple, Dad said. Your income was. We had adjusted our budget based on your contributions. Translation, they had spent 3 years living beyond their means because they knew I would cover the shortfall. Can I talk to her? I heard Mom's voice in the background. Madison, your mother wants to speak to you. Mom's voice came through, dripping with a forced sweetness I remembered from childhood when she wanted something from me. Honey, we've been so worried about you, she began. You left so suddenly, and we didn't know how to reach you. We didn't want to intrude if you needed space. The lie was so blatant, I almost laughed. They had my number, my work info, Emma's contact. If they'd wanted me for anything other than money, they could have reached me months ago. We made mistakes that night, Mom continued. We said things in anger. But you have to understand, we're family. Family works through problems together. What problems are we working through? I asked. Well, this financial situation, for one thing, she said, dropping the pretense slightly. We're facing foreclosure, Madison. We could lose the house. Is that really what you want? The emotional manipulation was exactly what Dr. Chin had warned me about. They were making their financial crisis my responsibility, my fault. How much do you owe? I asked. We're 3 months behind, Dad said, back on the phone. Plus late fees and penalties. We need about $6,000 to get current. $6,000. 3 months of mortgage payments they had expected me to cover, despite telling me to leave and never come back. What happened to the money you've been earning and saving without me around? I asked. Another pause. Patricia's hours were cut, Dad said. And Lucas needed help with an unexpected expense for school. Of course. Lucas needed money. And of course, they had prioritized his needs over their mortgage, assuming I'd eventually come back to fix their problems. Madison, Mom pleaded. I know we hurt your feelings, but you can't punish the whole family because of one argument. This house has been in our family for 30 years. Lucas grew up here. This is our home. The house she had called our house when she wanted to exclude me from decisions was now suddenly a family legacy I was responsible for preserving. I'm not punishing anyone, I said. I'm respecting your wishes. You told me to get out and never come back. You said you didn't need my guilt trips or my money. I believed you. We were angry. Dad protested. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. You have to know we didn't want you to actually leave forever. Then what did you want? I asked. The silence stretched. They knew the trap in the question. They had wanted me chastised. They had wanted me to accept their criticism, to keep paying their bills, while accepting less respect. They wanted the financial benefits without the inconvenience of treating me like a valued family member. We want you to come home, Mom finally said. We want our family back together. What would that look like? I asked. If I came back, what would be different? We'd treat you better, Dad said quickly. We'd be more appreciative. We'd make sure you felt valued. Empty promises. No acknowledgement of how they'd hurt me, no understanding of why their behavior was problematic, no concrete plan for change. And if I can't move back right away? I asked. If I need time to think about it? Well, we need help with the mortgage situation regardless, Mom said, even if you're not ready to move back. Surely you can help us avoid foreclosure. We're still family. There it was. The real ask. They wanted my money whether I came back or not. I looked around the grocery store at other shoppers, living their normal lives. I thought about my peaceful apartment, my growing savings, my improving work, my newfound sense of self-worth. I'll call you back, I said, and hung up. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what I was going to say. And I was finally ready to say it. I waited 2 days before calling my parents back. Not because I needed to make a decision, but because I wanted to be completely clear about my boundaries. I had spent too many years reacting to their demands. When I finally called, Dad answered on the first ring. Madison, thank God. We've been waiting to hear from you. I've made my decision, I said calmly. I won't be moving back home, and I won't be helping with the mortgage or any other financial obligations. The silence was so long I thought the call had dropped. What do you mean? Mom's voice cut in, sharp with disbelief. I mean exactly what I said. I'm not coming back and I'm not sending money. But we explained that we didn't mean what we said that night. Dad protested. We were upset. We want you to come home. No, you don't, I replied. You want my money. If you wanted me, you would have called 3 months ago to apologize. You would have reached out when you realized you missed me, not when you realized you missed my financial contributions. That's not fair, Mom said. We gave you space because we thought that's what you wanted. You gave me space because it was easier than admitting you were wrong, I corrected. And you only ended that space when you needed something from me. I could hear muffled conversation. Then Dad spoke again. Madison, I understand you're hurt, but we're facing foreclosure. We could lose our home. Surely your anger isn't worth more than your family's security. The attempt to make me responsible for their crisis was exactly what I had expected. And I was ready. Your financial security is not my responsibility, I said. You told me I was manipulative for making myself necessary to your finances. You told me I was controlling for having opinions about money I contributed. You told me I was selfish for prioritizing my career advancement. So I removed myself from your financial situation entirely. You're being vindictive, Mom accused. You're punishing us for one argument. I'm not punishing anyone, I replied. I'm protecting myself from being taken advantage of again. You spent 3 years accepting my money while criticizing my character. You made me feel guilty for every personal purchase while expecting me to fund your wants and needs without question. That's not a relationship I'm willing to continue. But we're family, Dad pleaded. Yes, we are, I agreed. And families should support each other's growth, celebrate each other's achievements, and treat each other with respect. When did you last do any of those things for me? The question hung in the air, unanswered. We all knew the truth. They couldn't remember. We'll do better, Mom promised. We'll change how we treat you. Just help us through this crisis and things will be different. You had 3 years to treat me better when I was contributing to your household, I said. You chose to take me for granted instead. I'm not giving you another opportunity to do the same thing. What about Lucas? Dad asked, playing what he clearly thought was his strongest card. He'll have to drop out of school if we lose the house. Do you want to ruin your brother's future? The emotional manipulation was so transparent, I felt insulted. Lucas is 23 years old, I replied. He can take out student loans like millions of other college students. He can get a part-time job like I did. He can learn to support himself instead of depending on family money for his lifestyle. That's cruel, Mom said. He shouldn't have to struggle because you're holding a grudge. It's not cruel to expect an adult to be financially responsible for himself, I said. It's not a grudge to refuse to enable a family that doesn't respect me. It's called having boundaries. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes. Guilt trips, empty promises, subtle threats. I listened with a detachment that surprised me. Finally, I ended the call with the words I had been preparing for days. I spent 3 years being your ATM while you criticized and dismissed me, I said. I sacrificed my social life, my career advancement, and my self-worth to keep you comfortable. You didn't appreciate it then, and you only miss it now because you need money. I'm not coming back to be taken for granted again. Madison, please. Dad tried one more time. You told me to get out and never come back, I continued. You said you didn't need my guilt trips or my money. I respected your wishes then, and I'm respecting them now. Don't contact me again unless you have something to say that doesn't involve asking for money. I hung up and immediately blocked their numbers. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. For the first time in years, I wasn't responsible for anyone else's financial security, emotional well-being, or life choices. I was free. 6 months later, I received a promotion at work with a significant salary increase. I moved into a beautiful one-bedroom apartment with hardwood floors and a balcony. I started dating someone who appreciated my ambition and independence. I took a vacation to Italy with Emma, something I never could have afforded before. Most importantly, I learned to value myself the way I had always valued others. I discovered that my worth wasn't determined by how much I could sacrifice or how many problems I could solve for other people. I was valuable simply because I existed, because I was kind and hardworking and thoughtful, not because I was useful. I never heard from my family again. That told me everything I needed to know about what I had truly meant to them. Through social media, I learned they lost the house and moved into a smaller rental. Lucas transferred to a community college and got a part-time job. My parents downsized significantly. I felt sadness about their struggles, but no guilt. They had made choices that led to their situation, and they would have to make choices to improve it. Those choices were not my responsibility. The most valuable lesson I learned was this: love should never require you to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. True family supports your growth and celebrates your success, rather than exploiting your loyalty and taking your sacrifices for granted. I thought being a good daughter meant sacrificing everything for family. But I learned that being a good daughter means respecting yourself enough to expect respect in return. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their choices, because that's the only way they learn to make better ones. I never heard from my family again, which told me everything I needed to know about what I had really meant to them. I saw snippets through social media, hushed whispers from distant relatives who still reached out occasionally. They had indeed lost the house, moved into a smaller rental. Lucas transferred to a community college, got a part-time job. My parents had to downsize their lifestyle significantly. I felt a pang of sadness, a quiet regret for the life they were now living, but no guilt. They had made choices, and those choices had consequences. And those consequences were not, and would never again be, my responsibility. My life, meanwhile, was flourishing in ways I never thought possible. That promotion I mentioned? It led to another, then a significant project managing a new product launch. I was traveling for work, presenting to executives, feeling genuinely challenged and fulfilled. The beautiful one-bedroom apartment I moved into became my sanctuary. It had tall windows, letting in so much light, and that small balcony overlooking a little park. I loved buying fresh flowers for it, arranging my books exactly how I wanted, painting the accent wall a calming seafoam green. It was mine. Every decision, every comfort, was a direct reflection of my choices, my taste, my hard work. And then there was Ben. We met at a networking event. He was a software engineer, kind, witty, and incredibly supportive. He listened when I talked about my work, my new hobbies, even my therapy sessions without judgment. He appreciated my ambition, my independence, and respected my boundaries implicitly. Our dates weren't about escaping a stressful home life. They were about shared experiences, laughter, and genuine connection. We went hiking, cooked elaborate meals together, debated books and movies for hours. For the first time, I felt truly seen, truly valued, for who I was, not for what I could provide. Emma and I took that trip to Italy. Rome, Florence, Venice. It was magical. I remember standing in front of the Colosseum, the ancient stones humming with history, and just feeling this profound sense of peace. I had earned this. Every gelato, every historic site, every breathtaking sunset over the Tuscan hills was a testament to my resilience, my courage to choose myself. I called Emma my chosen family, and she called me hers. We didn't need blood ties to define our loyalty. We had shared experiences, unconditional support, and mutual respect. The most incredible change was internal. I learned to value myself the way I had always valued others. My worth wasn't determined by how much I could sacrifice or how many problems I could solve. I was valuable simply because I existed, because I was kind, hardworking, and thoughtful. Not because I was useful. This realization was a slow burn, a quiet revolution in my soul. About 8 months after that final phone call, a new challenge emerged. It wasn't my parents directly this time, but a familiar name on my phone screen, Aunt Carol. My mom's older sister, a sweet woman I hadn't seen in years who always loved to keep up with family news. I hesitated, but curiosity and a residual thread of old loyalty made me answer. "Madison, honey, it's Aunt Carol," her voice chirped, a little too brightly. "Oh, it's so good to hear your voice. How are you, dear?" We exchanged pleasantries, mostly about my job and my new apartment, carefully skirting around the giant elephant in the room. Then, she took a breath. "Madison, I'm calling because, well, I'm worried about your mother. She's not doing well." My stomach tightened. Here it was. The opening. "What's wrong, Aunt Carol?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "Well, you know about the house, right? It was just devastating for them. And now your mom, she's having these terrible migraines again, worse than ever. And she just seems so lost. She misses you, Madison. She really does." I could hear the subtle shift, the soft pedaling of guilt. "Aunt Carol," I said gently, "I'm sorry to hear she's not well. But I think Mom made it pretty clear she didn't want me around." "Oh, honey, she didn't mean that." Aunt Carol insisted. "You know how families fight." She was just upset. "And your father, he's so stubborn. They just miss you so much. They talk about you all the time." They certainly didn't talk about missing me for the 3 months they spent ignoring my existence before they needed mortgage money, I pointed out, a sharp edge entering my voice despite myself. And they definitely didn't miss me when they were telling me I was a burden and to get out and never come back. There was a stunned silence on the other end. Aunt Carol had probably never heard me speak like that. "Well, yes, dear, that was all very unfortunate," she finally managed. "But families forgive, don't they? You're her only daughter. And they're really struggling. I just thought, maybe you could reach out. Just a call. It would mean the world to your mother." I closed my eyes, picturing my beautiful, sun-drenched apartment. Picturing Ben's kind smile, Emma's unwavering support. Picturing the strength Dr. Chin had helped me build. "Aunt Carol," I said, my voice firm. "I'm living my life. A life where I am respected and valued. My parents made their choices. They chose to tell me to leave. And I honored their wishes. If they genuinely wanted to connect with me as their daughter, they would have done so without needing an intermediary, and without waiting until they were in crisis. My mother's health and happiness are her own responsibility now. As are my father's. And Lucas's." "Oh, Madison," she sighed, clearly frustrated. "You're just being so hard. Family is family, you know." And sometimes, I countered, family isn't healthy. Sometimes, family takes. And takes. And takes until there's nothing left. I'm choosing not to let that happen to me anymore. I thanked her for her concern, wished her well, and gently ended the call. It was harder than blocking my parents, because Aunt Carol was genuinely kind, though misguided. But I knew this was another crucial boundary to uphold. That conversation, though difficult, reinforced my resolve. It showed me that the cycle of expectation and enablement was deeply ingrained, not just in my immediate family, but in the extended family's perception of how things work. And I had to be the one to break it. A few months later, Ben and I started talking about moving in together. It was a big step, a truly exhilarating prospect. We found a charming little house with a garden, and the thought of building a home with someone who genuinely respected me filled me with joy. We were having dinner one night, celebrating our decision, when my phone vibrated with a text. It was Lucas. "Hey," it read. "Long time no talk. Hope you're doing well. Just wanted to let you know I'm thinking of joining the army. Trying to figure things out." This wasn't a request for money. It wasn't a guilt trip. It was just a message. A window, perhaps, into his own struggles, his own journey. He was 23 now, almost 24. Had life hit him harder than he expected? Had he finally realized that effortless charm only gets you so far? I stared at the text. My first instinct was to ignore it, to protect my peace. But then I thought about Dr. Chin's words. You can set boundaries without cutting off love, if the other person is willing to respect them. Lucas hadn't been as actively cruel during the final confrontation as my parents. He had been complicit, yes, but also young, impressionable, and benefiting from the established dynamic. I typed back carefully. "Hey Lucas, glad to hear from you. The army is a big decision. Are you doing okay? What made you think of that?" His response came quickly, honestly, just trying to find my own way. "Things are tough at home. Community college isn't really cutting it, and Mom and Dad are stressed out all the time. Thought maybe some discipline, some direction." We texted back and forth for a while that night. No mention of money, no blame. He told me about his struggles, his feeling of being adrift. He sounded lost. It was the first time I felt a flicker of genuine empathy for him, unburdened by resentment. I didn't offer solutions, just listened, and shared a bit about my own journey of finding direction after college. I told him how tough it was to figure things out, how it took time. He messaged me again a few weeks later, asking if I'd be open to grabbing coffee sometime. "Just to catch up," he said. "No drama, I promise." I discussed it with Ben and Emma. They both supported me, emphasizing that I was in control, and I could leave at any time if it felt unhealthy. I met Lucas at a quiet coffee shop. He looked different. Thinner, a little more worn around the edges. He wasn't the glib, charming boy anymore. He was a young man grappling with the consequences of his parents' choices and his own. He apologized, clumsily at first, for his part in that final night. "I was just, I don't know, brainwashed, I guess," he said, staring into his coffee. Mom and dad made it sound like you were the problem, and I just went along with it. It was easier than facing the truth that they were the ones making bad choices. He admitted he had seen my parents' manipulation clearly once my financial support was gone. He saw them struggle, saw their anger, heard their complaints about me, but for the first time, he saw it without their safety net. He had started working part-time, trying to save, and realized just how much I had been shouldering. I don't know how you did it, Madison, he confessed, working 2 jobs, paying for everything. I wouldn't last a week. We talked for nearly 2 hours. I shared some of my journey, my therapy, the concepts of codependency and boundaries. He listened, really listened. He admitted he was seeing a therapist too, trying to figure out his own path. He said he still loved mom and dad, but he was starting to realize he couldn't live their life for them. He had decided against the army for now, choosing instead to focus on his studies at community college and saving up to transfer to a 4-year university. He wanted to learn a trade, something concrete, something he could build. It wasn't a full reconciliation, not yet. But it was a fragile beginning. We agreed to keep talking, to meet occasionally. We set ground rules, no discussing our parents' financial situation, no trying to mediate between me and them. Our conversations would be about our lives, our growth. This newfound connection with Lucas, however tentative, brought a different kind of resolution. It wasn't about forgiveness for my parents, at least not in the sense of resuming the old relationship. It was about forging a new path with one member of my family, based on mutual respect and understanding. It showed me that healing doesn't always look like a happy reunion. Sometimes, it looks like a respectful distance, a clear boundary, and the courage to say no more to what drains you and yes please to what nourishes your soul. I still live my vibrant, independent life. Ben and I bought that house, and I'm busy turning the garden into a sanctuary. My career continues to challenge and excite me. Emma and I are planning our next adventure. My conversations with Lucas are becoming more frequent, more open. He's found a new focus, a quiet determination. He's growing, just like I did. My parents? They are still struggling. I see it on social media, hear it in hushed tones from Aunt Carol when she calls, still trying to gently probe. But the desperate pleas for money never come to me directly anymore. I made my stance clear. They learned. Perhaps not the way I might have wished them to, with a heartfelt apology and true understanding, but they learned that my ATM days were over. The most valuable lesson I learned was this: love should never require you to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. True family supports your growth and celebrates your success rather than exploiting your loyalty and taking your sacrifices for granted. I thought being a good daughter meant sacrificing everything for family. But I learned that being a good daughter means respecting yourself enough to expect respect in return. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their choices, because that's the only way they learn to make better ones. I'm not ungrateful for what my family gave me growing up. I'm grateful for the strength I found to recognize when giving became enabling, when love became exploitation, and when loyalty became self-destruction. Walking away from my family was the hardest thing I ever did. But it was also the moment I finally learned to love myself, to truly thrive, and to build a life on my own terms. Today, I'm genuinely happy and free, surrounded by people who value me for who I am rather than what I can provide. I've learned that my worth isn't measured by how much I sacrifice for others, but by how well I honor my own value and maintain my boundaries. That's a lesson that changed everything for me, and I hope it might help someone else who's struggling with similar choices. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between family loyalty and self-respect? It's not an easy choice, but sometimes it's the only one that truly sets you free. Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck.